welcome to Critical Critique Gaming the System. It's been a while since we've done a gaming-related episode, so Bio has graced us with a suggestion from him, so hopefully it's a good one.
Honestly, there are not many gaming takes. There's a lot of reading of press releases and hour-long reviews, but there's very little in between.
It's really hard to find, like, especially with the rise of, the video essay, as it were, to find, like, a gaming video that is relatively short that's not going to take us 4 hours to cover.
You're not willing to rip into White Light's 7-hour review on Death Stranding? Like, what the, you fucking pussies?
Christ.
Lolly, I do not have the amount of alcohol that would be required to get through that, okay?
Well, I mean,
the only video that I could possibly conceive us doing that with would be that one fan service video that I think I got Ellie to watch that one time that I didn't watch because I couldn't be fucked.
There was only 1 hour.
Uploaded that. Yeah, but look, 1 hour for us is like 5 hours, Ellie.
Well, no. If you think about mathematically, a 30-minute video took us 4 hours to do.
Like,
so a 1 hour video would be 8 hours.
We'd have to, times 4 speed that shit or something.
How can you have an hour-long opinion on fucking titty shots in video games? Like, what are you doing, man?
It would be 8 hours for us, Lolly. Like, because,
but
if you do
anyway,
the math.
Anyway, let's get back on the rails already. Today we're going to be covering a video from Otaku Daikon, and it's going to be a video about remakes in disguise. It's going to be interesting. I'm familiar with Daikon. I've subscribed to him for quite a while. I quite enjoy some of his content.
His videos.
Videos, I quite enjoy the videos. I haven't watched them in a while, so I actually probably have quite a lot to catch up on, where he just kind of goes over, like, the history of fake characters. I quite enjoy that series.
Yeah, he also does a very interesting, like, lore breakdown of some stuff. Like, he also does, like, recaps of lore and stuff.
I saw he was doing a series on, like, the magic system in Fate and a few other things. So the guy makes good stuff, right? Like, I reckon
the guy knows his shit.
Kind of agree that he makes good, Fate Stay Night / Type Moon related content.
Actually, before we continue this video, I think a question we should ask is, like, what is our experiences with Tsukihime? Because I'm playing it right now.
None.
None? Oh.
I have no experience with it whatsoever. So
okay, so Lolly, I guess I'm gonna be
in the back seat on this one.
Okay, so Lolly, I guess it's me and you, Lolly.
Yeah, pretty much.
I have played it years ago, and I think most of the way through. And otherwise, I just watched. I watched Phantasm Carnival, the Carnival episodes.
Phantasm Carnival.
And I've
so we got like 3 people.
I've played Multi-Blood once for
nice.
15 minutes.
Okay, so we've got like at least 3 people who know a bit about Tsukihime. And one guy who does not know anything about Tsukihime, so it's basically just going to be me and Lolly, right?
But I can talk at least a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I know. It's just very rare.
On the generalized topic of remakes in disguise, I can probably.
Yeah, I can see. All right,
but let's kind of get in to see what Otaku Daikon's talking about. I don't suspect this is going to be a bad video based off what my familiarity with the content.
Yeah, like I watched like the first couple of minutes, didn't completely disagree, but we could get some.
We can also just watch the video.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, without any further ado, let's get into it.
Happy New Year, everyone! Looks like 2021 is going to be very kind to us Type Moon fans.
Oh, I thought he was going to say it was just going to be kind in general. I was like, oh, no, not really.
Oh, man, his production. That's what I mentioned. His production has gone up quite a bit in the last year or so. I remember the old intros and the old avatars, so it's quite interesting to see him evolve.
His voice still reminds me a little too much of like a Watch Mojo narrator.
Hey guys, I am here to talk about. I've never watched this guy before, so I have no...
Which Tsukihime characters would I fuck? Number 1.
I played Brunstead. Fuck yes.
fuck. Okay, but no, I just wanted to comment on that because I think it's fine. I like
so
little,
Noritsu, you're telling me that he's
you got little 3D anime girl dancing in your intro. You got your
so
own. Little...
Noritsu, what you're saying is that he's actually improving as a content creator. Are you telling me? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess you could say like visual improvements to like.
Really that hard to
wow.
like hire somebody on
there's
Etsy to do a fucking Blender animation for you?
There's a difference between like visual presentation improvement and actual content improvement. Let's just get that out the way. But I'm just making the comment while we're in the intro, so let's keep going.
Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. So after well over a decade, it's finally coming. The Tsukihime remake. Animation by Ufotable, an intro song by Emma, and that clean Takeuchi art throughout. What more can a guy ask for? As if that weren't enough, Type Moon also showed off more of their Fate Extra remake, Record, Muramasa as a servant in FGO, and a sequel to Carnival Phantasm called Fate Grand Carnival. Way to milk me dry, my dudes. Seriously, the hype is real, and my...
Yeah, it sounds real. I can hear it in his voice.
Yeah.
He's very hype.
I also can't unhear the Watch Mojo voice now.
Yeah, I ruined them for you.
You've ruined it for Ellie.
Okay, how about this, Ellie? You just mute the sound on your end so you don't have to listen to it.
No,
you don't have to listen. We
so,
don't want to.
So anyway, a lot of Fate stuff, I guess. Fate and Tsukihime stuff coming out, which is quite.
Yeah, listen.
Quite
as a fan of Tsukihime and as Arquade Brunstead is my number one waifu, damn fucking right, I'm excited.
Yeah, it sounds
get the hype.
Pretty dank. So yeah, let's keep going.
The only genuine concern is making sure they're smart enough to localize this stuff. All that's left is to finally release that Fate cooking game that's sadly been delayed due to COVID. The stream did provide us with some more footage, so that's good. In honor of the Tsukihime remake, I want to talk about the idea of remaking a classic property, covering why we want them, what they're supposed to do, and this odd new trend of calling things remakes when, technically, they're more like reboots. Spoiler warning, as I will be talking about Final Fantasy VII and its remake, so keep that in mind. Thankfully, in Tsukihime's case, it's not being titled Tsukihime Remake, but rather a piece of Blue Glass Moon, which might imply there's more to it than just retelling the same story with more polish.
Can you pause real quick again? I don't like his intonation with Blue Glass Moon, however he said it.
Man, is this entire video going to be you criticizing his voice?
Oh yeah, maybe.
Ellie.
At this point, he hasn't said
to criticize how someone sounds.
Yeah, no, I get you. At this point, he hasn't really said anything that's like a point that we can kind of discuss.
And I kind of wanted to pause at something, so why not at this intonation?
Yeah. He's just kind of talking about, here's the shit that's happening. Here's what we're going to be doing in the video. We're going to be talking about, remakes and why, sometimes it might be better to call them reboots, and stuff like that. So no, I haven't got any problems so far. It's just, a general intro. Is using
this is actually a very good intro. Like something to talk about. Like the way he introduces things. Like he doesn't waste your time. Like he says, this is what I'm going to be talking about. This is what I mentioned, and I actually like that.
I'll give him that because we're already a minute and a half in, and I've already got a generalized good idea of where this is what he's going to be presenting to us. So I think that's good. It's better than some other people that will just kind of not get to the point until 5 minutes.
The whole idea, the whole premise is kind of a little clickbaity. I'm not gonna lie, but This Type Moon even, I don't recall them even really have a history of changing, significantly changing.
I don't know who does the localizations for the games.
Well, I mean, in terms of their major properties, most of it is still just.
I know Grand Order. At the least, I know.
Yeah, Grand Order is the basic bitch shit that got localized.
Yeah,
so.
It's the gotcha bullshit. Yeah, so I know that has had some controversial changes over.
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about changes in terms of localization. I'm talking about I can't remember Type Moon's writers significantly changing something that already had a release. I think the most I could say is that Fate Extra CCC had some kind of meta character, like some meta storytelling that played on the former one.
Alright, interesting. Alright, well, let's continue.
You've been fooled before. Fate Extra Last Encore, for instance, sure looked like an anime adaptation of the original game, but it obviously turned out being a completely new story that plays off the original instead of adapting it. In the same way, we've got Higurashigo, which appeared at first to be a remake, but very quickly spun off into its own unique story. Final Fantasy VII, on the other hand, called itself a remake, and was just that for about 90% of the experience, but wound up becoming a spin-off or parody of itself by the end. What I mainly want to ask is, why is it so difficult for creators to provide an authentic remake without any huge twists or meta commentary? For that, we kinda need to define what a remake is.
So, in the case of Higurashigo and in the case of Fate Last Encore, both of those completely make sense within context that they would have something that that has a completely different spin on something that existed prior. A spoiler alert for Higurashi, that, everyone probably knows at this point, there's time loop bullshit going on.
Right. So that would, so that's justifiable.
And in Higurashigo's case, like, people are like, I don't know what's going on, and VN fans are like, I don't know either.
So, I like how he's actually going to make an attempt now to define his definition. I think that's quite good.
The thing is, I don't really see this as that much of, a trend. He says this about a trend, but the only thing I'm really thinking is,
Well, the examples he used was obviously Final Fantasy VII, Higurashigo, and the Fate one.
Well, the thing I believe I've played a little of that Fate game, and because it's a RPG-ish, it's a kind of an RPG with things you can, with the change, with the playthrough, that always means it's impossible to adapt it into a single story. I mean, you have something, but even the Persona anime doesn't really Persona enemies don't adapt the games.
It's not like you can if you have a game like that's an RPG that has multiple choices and multiple different ways that it can go, it can be very hard to kind of adapt that in a way, because you kind of have to pick a route and stick with it almost.
Unless you go something like the Amigami, I believe that's the title, the anime of the Amigami game.
Oh yeah, I think I know the one.
Or Yosuga no Sora, which was literally watch episode 1, 2, and 4, then 6, 7, and 8, and that's girl one route.
They would refer to that as the Omni. Yeah, they would refer to that as the omnibus format, and that was
I vaguely remember the Amigami one, because that's the one that's the dating sim one, yeah.
Yeah, also
Yosuga no Sora.
yes.
And the way they did that was, I believe they they just did okay, so these 3 episodes or whatever are going to be this girl's route, and then we're just gonna go back in time, and then just we're just gonna do each route as
and
a
episode 5.
Yeah.
And episode 5 is this Extra, and this girl's route together.
And this is also kind of spoilers with... Yeah, and with Fate Extra, and this is also just kind of spoiler territory with CCC, that makes sense given the metaphysics of the Mooncube simulation that the games take place in. That there are just multiple variations of the same events happening.
Right. Okay. So let's let him continue.
As for Final Fantasy VII, that's just Nomura.
Yeah, I don't know about the remake. I didn't play 7.
I've heard mixed things about the remake, but let's continue.
I know nothing. So I'm actually more interested in seeing how he's going to define what he's talking about, because I think that this is something I would actually like to see more YouTubers do. So I'm interested to see how he does it.
Sounds strange, but there are different ways to interpret its meaning. Remakes are different from ports or remasters, defined typically by the amount of work that goes into them. When Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts made their way to modern consoles, the core games were exactly the same, just rendered in higher resolution and some slightly updated character models.
I like 10 too.
Even
I don't care what
Xenoblade
people
Chronicles
say.
Definitive Edition was technically a remaster on a much larger scale. The idea behind Final Fantasy VII Remake, however, seemed like a much clearer concept. We have the original game from 1997, and while it's still a great experience, it's devoid of many of the advancements technology has made since its release. The film Advent Children, as well as works like Crisis Core, showed us the potential that modern graphics and game mechanics could bring to the original, and so when Square Enix released a tech demo of the game's opening cutscene, fans wanted the full experience. Basically, wouldn't it be amazing if we had Final Fantasy VII, but the graphics were as good as Advent Children, and it took advantage of modern gaming mechanics? What if we could experience the game's world, not as a series of pre-rendered camera angles, but rather a fully explorable open world? After all, Square Enix has been making some gorgeous games, but a lot of the modern sensibilities the company adopts overcomplicate things like stories. And if
Yeah, he hasn't really defined anything yet. Like, he said he was going to...
I hate the idea that there's something wrong with necessarily having a more linear RPG that's using like fixed structure in its environments rather than, oh my god, dude, this world is so fucking huge.
You see that mountain? You can climb it.
I mean...
Yeah, like, here's my problem with that. Like, here's the problem is I feel like he's... Like, when Final Fantasy VII came out for the first time, like, it was game-breaking. Like,
yeah, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was groundbreaking. So I feel like that is a bit of a flaw in the flaw of his argument, because, like, define modern for me right now. Like, what is modern? Like, back in, like, the 90s...
Contemporary.
You have games... Yeah, because you have games coming out right now that arguably had maybe not the same kind of like style of graphics as Final Fantasy VII original, but you have games that are like specifically aiming for a more retro inspired type of style, yet are, you know, modern games, right? But they still have like, you know, they're aiming to recreate the experience.
I can bravely do default is fixed camera angles, very pretty art, and fast forwarding and custom difficulty settings and custom setting your own encounter. You can also set your own encounter rate, so you can set it to 0 and you have no enemies, no random battles.
Yeah. So you have a experience which is, you know, somewhat like a classic experience with some modern conveniences, essentially.
Also, to define what you mean by modern. In the case of Square Enix, it's make something that is nothing like a traditional RPG. Call it an RPG anyways. Make it incredibly mediocre, and then watch as your fans just fucking lap it up. I'm sorry, 15 was bad.
Look. See, here's my thing. I'm mad at Square Enix specifically because Deus Ex died for Marvel, and that makes me very mad.
Yeah. Hey, but I mean, aren't you just so like fucking enthralled by Cyberpunk 2077 not really being an RPG?
Let's I think, Blolly, we have to wait for Cyberpunk to be done first, because Cyberpunk is not actually done yet.
It's not even finished.
You mean you didn't buy into the alpha?
No, I didn't buy into the alpha, Lolly.
Damn.
What are you talking about?
Who the fuck buys alpha for game? Who the fuck buys an alpha for a game?
Okay. Getting back on track. I want to talk about critique the video, right? So, he's spending a bit too much time on this. I feel like I would have liked a bit more of a definitive definition by now, right? Like, okay, this is the type of remake that I'm talking about, right? I define this type of remake as this, right? This is a different kind of remake that I'm going to mention, but, you know, like that kind of thing. I would have liked it to be a bit streamlined, I guess, because I get what he's trying to say, right? I just think that he's using a bit too many, you know, steps.
Yeah, it's a bit too long-winded, and I find his perspective a bit too focused in the modern.
I get where it's basically a matter of like I get where he's going with this, but I think that he could probably have like maybe done some editing on the script side of things to sort of streamline.
I think let's move on.
Well,
Yeah, let's
I
get
mean,
And if we're
Oh wait,
if you want an answer, I mean, he can still go. But if you want an answer, just look at the timestamp. It's specifically so you can get past the 12-minute mark.
All right, well, let's continue.
resulted in haphazard experiences. Final Fantasy 15, for instance, is an enjoyable game on its own, but it falls short as a Final Fantasy title. Despite being open world, it ironically felt much smaller than previous
I wasn't
games that
thinking the
represented
same
an entire
joke about
planet
white
through
girls with those
overworlds
dog
and
shows.
classic maps. It felt
I
less
was
like
the
you were
only one.
experiencing a fully realized place, and more like you were taking a short road trip between two towns. What would normally be entire cities were instead reduced to gas stations and food carts. Globally speaking, the explorable open world of Final Fantasy XV seemed relative to the distance it took for Cloud to run from Midgard to the first town of Calm in the original game. Thus, fans decided it would be best to take a tried-and-true game like Final Fantasy VII, which already had a great story, world building, and structure, and fully realize it, rather than develop new titles that feel more like Kingdom Hearts with each release. Again, for the vast majority of the remake,
can
it
you
got
pause real
just
quick?
that. It was wonderful running.
Because either he misspoke or he's trying to say something else. He said that fans decided that they would rather make or want a final.
Yeah, I was a bit confused by that sentence as well. I think again, that sounds to me like the script could have used a little bit of time in the editing oven.
Just a little
Just
bit,
a
at
little
least.
bit.
I mean, because I get that fans were disappointed with Final Fantasy 15 and that it felt smaller. It felt rather small, and that therefore developers decided to remake 7. But also, if I know this correctly, the desire to remake Final Fantasy VII existed long before Final Fantasy 15.
And I think the actual remake of 7 has been kind of cooking in the oven at Square Enix for quite some time, probably even during the development of 15.
Here's the thing with 15's development too. That also had major production problems.
Oh man,
different...
15 was a I watched.
Didn't they have to remake it several times during production?
Whose video? Whose video was it that I watched? I watched someone's really good video about 15, which was a comprehensive overview of the game in all aspects or something. It was one of those video essays or something where he kind of taught. Oh god, I wish I remembered who it was so I could shout it out because it was actually really good. But he talks kind of a bit about the development of it because it started off as Versus 13, I believe. It was going to be a sequel to a side thing to the whole 13 franchise, which at the time was because you had lightning and all that kind of shit going on, right? Yeah. But what happened was, I believe, who did they have originally on Versus? Do you remember, Lokes? I don't fucking remember. It was one of the bigger. Was it Nomura? I can't remember if it was Nomura or not. Or if Nomura continued.
I think it came in later. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, it was. They had. The basic gist was they had someone on for Versus 13. They had gotten maybe not quite far is the wrong way to say it, but they got they had enough so that they could make a tech demo of it, right? They had enough of the game
prototype
planned out.
Stage or something.
Yeah, they had it in I'd say late alpha, really close to going into beta, but then something happened, and the guy that was originally working on it left the project or something, and they essentially just scrapped almost 90% of the game and had to remake. All they really had was the combat system and some of the assets that they also had to touch up as well. So yeah, the development, the general point is that the development of 15 is actually a really interesting thing to look up and research, because it's fucking once you actually understand, it's kind of with almost when you look into New Vegas's development, where it's once you actually look into the development of this game, the reasons why it's so fucking jank start to become very clearly obvious, right?
Or just 3 in general of what was going to be preceding that Rock Island. But yeah, no. So what I wanted to say, or the point I was trying to get to, though, is he mentions how the fan, or he words it weird, but he basically
does,
kind of
yeah.
implies that like the devs were like, man, I can't believe we made this so short. And when I'm thinking, I don't think that was intentional, and they probably were more just like, man, I'm sure glad this is over.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And I also don't know how much like fan input would have like influenced the decisions.
No,
'cause
especially with Nomura, it absolutely wouldn't. Nomura is really fucking eccentric.
And again, like, something to always keep in mind when talking about video game development like this, right, is that these games are like cooking in the oven for like probably a couple of, or maybe even 3 or 4 years before we possibly even know that they exist sometimes, right? Like,
No.
I'll bring up Cyberpunk just because that was a case where we did know it existed, right? Like, Cyberpunk had been in development, so, like, when was that first trailer or teaser thing even, like, fucking
Okay,
shown?
so with Cyberpunk,
Yeah.
this is kind of
Short
a...
version.
With Cyberpunk, this is also kind of... People seem to think it was in development since 2013 when the trailer was shown, but it really wasn't. They only started
true,
development on it, like, I think they said, like, in 2016 or 2015 they announced that they were going full on development. Like, because remember, The Witcher 3 was still...
yeah,
still
that's
hadn't been
right.
released
Now,
yet.
I'd forgotten about that, yeah.
So if I were to, like,
they had
guess...
teased it, but they were still working on Witcher, but they were, like, half working on Cyberpunk in the background, and then once Witcher sort of, like, wrapped up, then they went full on Cyberpunk, is I believe what the situation was, just to kind of speed up a little bit. But even then, if they had gotten into like, full on development in like 2016, it's 2020 now, so that kind of puts it into perspective of like these games, they take a long time to make, right? Regardless of like what the quality tends
like,
to end up being.
Usually when games are usually half developed, like they're basically building the skeleton, essentially.
Right. So the point I'm trying to make, so we can move on, is basically that it's always good to kind of assume that games are like, before we even figure out that it might be different now because game companies like to tease games way too early, at least in my opinion, but we typically only tend to find out that a game exists when it's at least in like the early to mid beta sort of state, right? It's like they've already probably been working on it for like at least 2 years before we find out about it. So that's just something to keep in mind.
There's a very interesting discussion, and like, yeah, I know we want to move on, but like, there's a very interesting discussion to be had about the public understanding of game development, because I see this all the time where people are like, wow, they cut all of these features out of this game, and it's like, no, dropping features in the game is completely fucking normal to any game's development.
I mean, as someone who, you know, has a bit of experience with coding and, like, you know, because I study IT and shit, like, do you know how much of a pain of an ass it is to program a computer to do simple shit?
Yeah.
yeah, it's
counting numbers and values is complicated.
It's all
and that's
well and
simple
good.
Shit.
Yeah, it's all well and good to have. I know. God, we're gonna be here for like the next 30 minutes, but it's
absolutely.
Like, hell, I mean, it gives us a good thing to talk about. So I mean, it makes the episode entertaining.
All right,
but
he said weird thing that fans decided to make the game.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, maybe we could do a different cast on that topic, because I agree with Lolly, that's an interesting topic to talk about, but let's continue.
On Midgar, taking the camera through all sorts of angles that were never before possible. The characters were all far more expressive, especially side characters and NPCs, who now had to appear like they were actually living throughout the city.
Aren't you
Content
excited
was added to better flesh out the world,
that you're just watching all these battles happen
spirit.
rather than engaging in
Even
them?
the combat, despite being action-oriented, still feels like the original through the various ways you can level, combine, and customize materia. Only at the end does this go off the deep end, revealing that the game we knew and loved was simply a diverging timeline of the game we're currently playing. The characters are now going to break the bonds of fate and head down a new path. To kick it off, the game ends with a final battle against Sephiroth that makes shot-for-shot references to the final battle from the original game. Only at this point in the story, we should only just be introduced to Sephiroth. It infuriates me to no end, and I want to explore the possible reasons a creator might feel inclined to do this sort of thing.
Real quick pause. Why?
Okay.
I mean, I guess if he really wanted a pure remake, yeah, that infuriates him. Besides, I don't believe his fury because he said it so lackadaisically.
Well, I think he's being a bit hyperbolic,
Yeah.
but I get what he's trying to say, and I think he's about to like explain himself a little bit as to why he finds it
also,
annoying. But
from what I know I know very little, but I've heard people discuss the Final Fantasy remake, and apparently there were already deviations from like the first meeting between Cloud and Aerith.
Yes.
So
okay.
if there are deviation in the first meeting, why is it not a surprise that the end is going to deviate even further?
I'm not sure, but let's let Daikun kind of explain himself.
And why they probably shouldn't. Let's start with why I find it frustrating. In the original game, there was meaning behind Cloud's final battle with Sephiroth. Cloud's entire character arc is about finding strength in himself after the stark realization that he modeled his entire identity after Zack, a much more successful hero. Basically, Cloud wanted to become a first-class soldier like Sephiroth, but never made the cut. The best he could do was be a foot soldier that got to hang around Sephiroth on a mission where he met Zack. Zack was everything Cloud wanted to be but couldn't, and so when Zack died and entrusted Cloud with his legacy, Cloud convinced himself that he was Zack, or rather that he had done all the great things Zack did. Sephiroth served as a great foil to this, because he kept trying to make Cloud realize this false identity. He called Cloud a puppet, even taking control of him on occasion due to their common Genova cells. When this all comes to a head, well, inside Cloud's head, he recalls that he actually managed to beat Sephiroth.
We're halfway
before,
through. This was a
motivated to
Tsukihime
save his
video, right?
Also, I don't
Yeah,
believe
I
all this
fucking
detail
hope.
is relevant to the conversation.
I don't.
Even then, I know where he's going with this. That new thing bad because it didn't do this previous thing, but you could say that a possible direction that the remakes could go in is that, sorry. But there's a possible direction that the remakes could actually go in is that, if, in the previous game, Cloud is trying to live is trying to live up to Zack's identity. Now he's kind of having to live with the fact that there's another successful version of himself in another timeline that he has to live up to as well, right? You could argue that.
Well, I would rather
I mean, there's also
say...
yeah,
I would rather... I mean, I guess he's frustrated that a meaningful moment in the previous game is used in a completely different way in this game. But I don't see how... Sure, it was meaningful in this game, and it is used differently in this game. Just because it's differently, it doesn't mean there could be another. When the whole realization thing happens later, that becomes a meaningful moment.
I'll let you go, Bo, but I kind of get where he's going. Like's been mentioned, like he's trying to make the point that he liked how this was done in the original games, right? Because he's covering like multiple games here, right? At this point, he liked how that story was told and how that story progressed. So when that story is not the same in the supposed remake, I can understand his frustration with that. I think that makes sense. But the issue with that is one, talking about the video, he's spending way too long, just basically recapping Final Fantasy to us, right? That's a bit of a problem.
It's almost like the Tsukihime bit is tacked on.
Yeah. And the other thing, before I let Bio go, is that just because it's done differently and it's not done in a way that you prefer, doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad quality-wise, right? Like objective.
That's actually good. That's actually good you say that, because I was about to go into that. Like, here's the thing with the remake of Final Fantasy VII is it's not finished yet. Like, we're not going to see the full payoff until it's finished.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, because you can say that for the first game in retrospect because it's a complete game, But for Final Fantasy VII, like if they're changing up the story, we don't know what the payoff will be. It's like watching a third of a movie and saying like, oh, this movie sucks. This scene sucks, and then realizing if you watch the full movie, it's like, oh, this was amazing. Great payoff.
Yeah, that makes sense. But Anyway, let's keep going.
His childhood crush, Cloud yeeted Sephiroth into the depths of a Mako reactor. That, and despite living a lie, Cloud did ultimately become a strong warrior like Zack, possibly even surpassing him. It's only by acknowledging himself sincerely that Cloud becomes strong enough to finally confront Sephiroth in an honest duel. It's this arc, and the development behind it, that makes the final battle against Sephiroth in the original game so impactful. In the remake, however, Cloud hasn't confronted any of this. We haven't gotten to the part in the story where he lies about his past, and yet here he is fighting Sephiroth as though he's gone through his entire arc. Why? What's the point of this? Well, as one of the developers reasoned, fans who played the original already know these things. The reason is that going through Cloud's arc again wouldn't have the same impact for a second time around, so they felt they needed to substitute it for something new and exciting. This logic bothers me.
Okay, first thing, I would like sauce. I would like some tomato sauce, please, on my pie.
Listen, he's American. They call it ketchup, but yes, I would like some. Yes, I would like some sauce.
I would like. I'm not saying that I doubt that this was something said in an interview. I just think that if he's going to bring it up, it should be like listed on screen, like, okay, source, such or such website, such and such interview. Right?
I mean, we could check the description, like.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I don't know. I might have a look. I'll just bring it up in a new tab.
Like he could have the source.
Yeah, no, I'm actually looking in his...
no, I don't see it.
But either way,
Okay.
I
Like
don't
any sauce?
particularly
Bad.
care if it's different now. So I guess I know he's frustrated because there is a missing arc up till this point. But if you know the arc, then you're just excited.
But what does this have to do with Tsukihime?
Yeah. Okay. Firstly, what does this have to do with Tsukihime? And secondly, let's run under the assumption that what he's saying is true, and that is what the developers' reasoning for why they did what they did is. Right. Let's go under that assumption because he hasn't provided a source, and providing, as we know, you have to source your shit, right? And that's a very, very big black mark on him. Sorry, Daikon, but that's really bad. You should source your shit.
Yeah, bad Daikon. Cite your shit.
Yeah, cite your shit. But let's run under the assumption that what he said is something that was said in an interview. So the developers themselves have said, we made it the way that we made it because we believe that second time, people playing the game for a second time already know everything about Cloud and are not going to, they don't want to go through the same thing twice or whatever.
Here's the thing,
I actually agree with Daikon that reasoning is very fucking stupid. Because
here's the problem with that reasoning is that what if you did what if you're a kid and you heard about Final Fantasy but you don't have you see Final Fantasy VII and it's like updated and stuff like that. It's like, oh, cool, and you play it and it's like, and like you see your dad, your stepbrother.
Yeah,
like,
that was exactly the point I was about to make. Was like, sure, for people that played the original back in like 19 whatever, right? Like that's okay, but this is way in the future where you have those people have kids now. Right? You get what I'm like? They have kids.
You know what it's like. You know what it's like, and I got a great example. It's the Digimon Adventure reboot. Like when I watch the reboot, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like there's this massive disconnect. But aside from that, but when I was young, I heard about Final Fantasy VII and how it was like the hot shit, but I never played it. This game would be for those people who never played it or don't like the retrospect. To be like,
in short, I never played Final Fantasy VII. I never knew this, and therefore I don't really care if it was such a meaningful moment before.
That's one way to look at it, but I'm talking about from the perspective of like the creators making the game, right? I think that the reasoning is very I said stupid, but I don't know. I think a different word would fit better. I think it is unwise. I don't want to say stupid because I don't think it's like actually like because I get it. I just think that it's not taking into account the fact that there's going to be a lot of people that have probably never played the original that are going to be playing these remakes for the first time, and you should factor that into your, like, equation a little bit when you're thinking about these things. Because, like, if you've made a game where, okay, sure, people who have played the original can play it and have a great time and enjoy the flashy cloud, fight the Sephiroth's big swordy dick man, right? that's all well and good, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be confused as shit because they don't know what the fuck's going on.
Well,
right?
No, that's not true. I mean, I guess we're spending too much on time on this point, but if you never...
look, we've spent too much time on every point, Ali. Just let it out. Just go. It's fine.
If I play the game and the game leads up to the point where I fight Sephiroth for the first time in the desolate landscape that I saw just a brief moment of, then that is what's going on. I don't believe the game is set up in a way where I suddenly fight Sephiroth out of nowhere in a remake.
Well, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so I don't
believe there's a build up to it.
I don't think there is ever a point where you suddenly find Sephiroth just for the nostalgia factor, because there's a whole new story.
I'm just saying that taking the assumption that what Daikon just said from the interview is true, and that's the reasoning. I disagree with that reasoning, because I think that you should factor in the first-time player experience into what you're doing.
Well,
right? Like,
the thing is...
No, because it's good to factor in the people that have already played the original, right? That's fine and dandy, but I just don't like, in general, like, maybe in this case it's fine, because again, I haven't played the games, I don't know anything. I could play the remake and not have any knowledge of the original games, and maybe I'll think it's absolutely fine. There's no issues whatsoever. It's not confusing. It's not a big problem. Whatever. But taking the statement on face value, like as a general rule, I personally think that it's much better to think about, hey, maybe we should consider that maybe there's people that are playing this for the first time and might need like a little bit more than just...
From what I all understand and know, the problem that Daikon has, is that the fight scene is cool and awesome and fun and whatever. It's just it's missing all the contexts, all the events leading up to what was in the original a very emotional moment. Well, in the remake, It's not an emotional moment. It's a moment of tension, of surprise.
It's a climax.
Yeah, and while it's in the original, it's an emotional moment of confrontation of your past. Well, in the remake, it's a exciting moment where you face off against your enemy. And Daikon is frustrated at the lack of emotional impact, which doesn't really mean anything to somebody who plays it for the first time. It's just a moment that is cool without emotional impact.
I can get that perspective. I think that's fine. I'm just saying that I understand his frustration. I understand where he's coming from. I understand where you're coming from, but I also understand where he's coming from.
You're a very understanding man, Naretsu.
I am a very understanding man. I think both are actually quite valid. I think that both perspectives are valid in this case. I don't think Daikon is actually wrong in his frustration about this. I think that it's complicated. I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on and see how he explains himself further.
For two reasons. One, it's a big middle finger to newcomers to the story.
Oh, look at
Classic
that! He literally just made my point.
Why is the middle finger if they don't even know? I mean, I guess they are missing.
Let him explain his point.
Look, okay. Let me. Okay, I know we want to keep going, but let me try and explain this, right?
Well,
this is not me. I
know
the stand,
I know why.
Right, this is not me taking the stand, right?
I know what the problem is. The new people are missing out. But if it's a different story, then they aren't not missing out. Because it's different. It's a different story.
I don't know. I'm just saying I understand where he's coming from, but let's continue.
Can we play the video?
Primitive presentation endearing, but modern audiences won't necessarily get that charm. As such, there's more than enough reason to tell the exact same story with new presentation. The other reason is that Square Enix is implying older fans won't be satisfied seeing the same old story with a new coat of paint. That's just not true. There are many stories that I love to revisit, some of which feeling even more impactful during additional viewings.
Old fans will just be satisfied with the same thing, but just looks a little bit prettier. We're gullible like that. We'll buy anything.
Yeah, man.
Nice that he says that.
I don't think that was
actually
what he meant, but consume.
I mean, if you look at like the Sakuga fags who are like, "Oh, this anime looks great," 6 months later, no longer looks great anymore because something better came out.
That's a bit more of it. I would disagree with that because animation, especially 2D animation that looks good or can actually age better with time.
And the thing with video games is a good stylized game.
Listen, I'm not agreeing with these people. I'm just making fun of what they're.
But a good stylized, well done, art directed game is timeless, right? That's another thing to consider. Like, I mean, hell, I would argue that KOTOR 2 still looks pretty fucking good. You know, to this day, it still looks alright. It might look a little bit blocky and a little bit janky, but it's still fine. You know, and there's other
comparing
games...
video game graphics to like 2D animation's kind of retarded.
Yeah, because I actually think the thing that dates a lot of games is actually the striving to be realism, right? The realism stuff. I actually think that dates a game way harder than having an actual like good art style. Because if you look at games from like the Xbox, PlayStation 2 era, right, like back then, like a lot of those games, sure, they might be a little bit more pixely and they might be a little bit less on the polygon count or whatever. But if the style's there, and you know, it'll probably look fine, just upscale to like 1080p or 1440 or 4K or whatever. You don't really have to do a whole lot to it. It's in the cases where it's like, yeah, no, this looks dated as shit because the style's not there for it. But anyway, let's continue.
Stories I don't feel this way about are the ones that rely on cheap gimmicks like plot twists to make a story seem more interesting than it really is. However, a story worth telling once is a story worth telling multiple times. And I can guarantee that going through Cloud's original arc in the remake would be just as valuable, if not more so, than the first time. The other implication behind the developer's logic is that perhaps because they had already developed Cloud in the original game, they didn't need to do it again. They could use the original as a crutch in telling the remake's story. Personally, I don't think this works at all. It's kinda like when Studio Dean made their film adaptation of Unlimited Blade Works. As a standalone film, it skipped out on the vast majority of the plot and character development in favor of showing the fights and iconic parts. It's a lot more bearable if you've already played the visual novel, and see the film as just a quick summary or digest of events.
Their version of UBW wasn't shit. Can I just talk to a minute how I fucking hate the art direction at for Fate Zero? Just like in terms of character art.
Go. I'm interested.
Fucking everyone's face looks way too fucking long. I don't really know how else to explain it. Also, the visual effects and I said Zero, I meant Unlimited Blade Works. Zero's was fine.
You meant
Zero has the same art style.
You meant the UFO table ones.
Yeah, the UFO-table ones. Unlimited Blade Works, how that art style was, it was just very weird to watch. Also, there was an over-reliance on visual effects that I always kind of disliked UFO-table for.
Yeah, UFO-table, sometimes they look good. What's it, Demon Slayer? I think Demon Slayer looks alright. Demon Slayer looks really good. And that's a case where it looks fine, but I think there was a point in time, when they were doing, the Fate stuff, where, because they did the Fate Unlimited Blade Works anime, but they also did, what was it, which Tales was it? It was the one with the two guys. I can't remember what one it was. But they did one of the Tales games anime, and I swear to Christ the visual the little particle effects and shit was like literally the same shit from fucking from Fate, just like put on a
Yeah, I know
different
the way
skin.
you're talking about. I think I have
Like, and
that.
they had it like it was like you could look at it and you could go, oh yeah, that's definitely a UFO table effect. Like they probably have that in like a fucking effect bank somewhere, right? And they just pull that out. Like with at least with Demon Slayer, it's like, oh, okay, you know, they did some new shit for this. This is not like the same like 3D type effect type stuff that they did for the other ones. But you know, I get your criticism. It's a bit off topic, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. So yeah, let's continue.
That's fine and all, but then Ufotable comes around and gives Unlimited Blade Works a comprehensive adaptation, and
No.
popular consensus declares it to be superior.
Fuck off,
This
no.
proves that
Fucking
fans
pause.
have seen the story before.
Pause. This is going to go into some autistic territory. No, it didn't, because 99% of the fucking character arc, Shiro's character arc, was internal monologue that they never presented properly. So when people watch it, people are often like, man, why is Shiro even doing half of this shit? And, like, a lot of it's also kind of based off of the stuff you see in the first route. That would be the route with Saber, because each of the consecutive routes builds off of the character. While the events are in different timelines, they build off of each other, and then it concludes with Evansville.
So you reckon it would probably have been better if they'd started with the first route instead of jumping straight to the
It's more that, man, I mean, okay, I'm criticizing Ufotable, but I don't think there's a decent way to adapt Fate Stay Night because of how Natsu's writing is so heavily dependent on internal dialogue.
Well, just have it done by
it's
Shaft.
hard to translate that visually.
Have it done by Shaft.
I'm just imagining like this. I'm just
That's
imagining
what
like,
last
details.
That's what Last Encore did, and nobody liked that.
Oh damn.
Oh man, but yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. I think
Last
that's
Encore
fine.
sucks.
But anyway,
That was alright.
Let's keep going.
Okay, pause real quick.
Pause real quick. I just want to point out one thing. He mentioned Fate Unlimited Blade Works before he mentioned Tsukihime in his Tsukihime video.
He mentioned Tsukihime
Naretsu?
at like the very beginning of the video, and then he hasn't mentioned it since.
Naretsu, can you for me?
Yeah?
Can you go back to the moment you started playing the video and do it again for me?
You mean like maybe there? I think. Let me try.
The effort of properly retelling it. Another possible motive for FF7 Remake's ending is the fear of rendering the original game obsolete. If the remake
Yeah.
Alright, if you,
that was
last moment I heard something like rendering the original obsolete. That's the last line said.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's right. It's fine. But anyway, yeah, he hasn't. Again, he's talking more about Final Fantasy VII Remake and his problems.
Yeah,
with
where's
it.
the Tsukihime?
I feel like this really should have been a Final Fantasy VII video that he's kind of made a Tsukihime video, because I mean Tsukihime is probably getting good search results right now.
Yeah,
Look,
listen, if there's no
listen.
Tsukihime in this video, I'm giving this video an F.
Okay,
Listen,
just
buddy.
a challenge here. Ellie, you need to mention Tsukihime in this title and see what the results
See
are.
what happens, yeah? Okay, listen, Daikin. I get it. I respect the hustle, alright? I respect the hustle. I understand you gotta play the algorithm sometimes, but that doesn't mean we're not gonna rip on you for it, okay?
Tsukihime.
You know. I mean, look, we've still got like what, a third of the video left. Let's see if he ties it back in.
If the remake were just an original game, but made more modern in every objective regard, fans would no longer have any reason to visit the PS1 classic. Again, this is false. Even if the remake became the definitive way to experience FF7, there'd still be fans who prefer the original or still appreciate its historical relevance. Sometimes
Well, no, I just want to bring up a question about that. How actually easy is it to, like, I guess you could emulate it.
I mean, you can
but
buy it on
is
Switch.
the original, like, actually... Oh, is it on is the original
Yeah.
on the Switch?
Yeah, you can buy it on Xbox One, and I
Ah,
think
all right. Well, that's fine then. I was gonna say because like
$5.
in some of these cases, like I can like I would have more sympathy for his argument here if it was a case of like, yeah, no, the original game is like not available anywhere else, and this remake was going to be like one of the main ways that people would be able to actually.
Nah,
get the
well,
game,
that
right?
was something
Like,
like
that
a
would
surprise when like 5 different Final Fantasy games were coming to Switch, and finally Final Fantasy VII also came to came to a Nintendo
the
console.
original. Yeah, so I yeah. So I would have more sympathy for the argument if that was the case, but if the original is widely available on like all platforms, then it's kind of like there's nothing really stopping anyone from just going and picking it up for like $5 or however much it costs, you know.
I mean, for me, it costed like $5, so
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's not like it's not like it's some kind of lost media or something that they're remaking, or like something that's on like a very like niche like type thing. No. I just kind of wanted to make that point, so it's
the urge to make an authentic remake out of pride as an auteur. Personally, I saw FF7 Remake as an opportunity to effectively leash Square Enix creative potential. They could go all out on the graphics, but adherence to the original story, designs, and gameplay would keep them from going wacky bonkers Kingdom Hearts on the story. After all, that's what happened to the third birthday. They couldn't be bothered telling a more grounded story about a mutant infestation in New York.
Oh no!
I noticed he mentioned like Kingdom Hearts like 4 times now. Whenever it's bad, it's Kingdom Hearts.
I think it's because like Final Fantasy 15 and I think a little bit of the 7 remake kind of copied some of like the Kingdom Hearts sort of combat type style, like the whole live combat type thing. Actually, if you want to see an example of doing like a more traditional RPG kind of combat thing, look at Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like that shit's fucking great. I fucking love that shit. It looks really good. I actually want to get that game because it looks fucking great. Because the way they do it is they basically it's like because they had to they translated like street fights into like a Dragon Quest type system. It looks really good. It's really fun. So,
yeah, you have like your classes, like you have your anarchy and your
well,
anarchy.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like just the way that the combat actually functions, where you have like everyone's just kind of like moving around, like it's still turn based, but everyone is like moving around.
Before
and, like,
you start
get
this again,
blocked.
could you go back like 5 seconds or whatever? Because I want to hear what he's about to say about third birthday.
Alright, let me go. Alright, there we go. But I'll just cap off and then we'll move on about talking about Yakuza. Yeah, no, go look up Yakuza Like a Dragon. It looks like the combat is very interesting in that it's great because the whole justification for it is that the main character is just a huge fucking Dragon Quest fan, and he's like mentally using his imagination to internalize all of the street fights as like Dragon Quest battles. It's fucking hilarious because all of the like teammates literally think he's insane. It's great.
Well, if you what was his name? Like that guy with the eye patch. I think he's called Mad Dog or something. I forget his name.
Majima, yeah.
Yeah, Majima. That guy is fucking lunatic. Like it's Yakuza, man. What do you expect?
Majima's great, but anyway, let's keep going.
Telling a more grounded story about a mutant infestation in New York. Rather, they just had to stuff it with time travel, reincarnations, and strange aliens manifesting.
So, grounded story about a mutant infestation in New York. How many of you are familiar with Parasite Eve?
I have watched some videos. That's how familiar
I've heard of it.
I think I know enough to have a conversation.
I'm actually reading the first novel right now. You know... So you know what the backstory of this totally grounded story about a mutant infestation in New York is, right? Alright, so, get this, right? So, the entire thing, is the start of, like, basically people's mitochondria becoming sentient through some weird psychic linking bullshit, and this is all related to, like, the mother of all life, from the primordial ooze, and the main character is having, like, flashbacks to the ooze. It's... The last thing I could call it is grounded. Yeah, time travel's stupid, whatever. But I would never call Fire Parasite Eve grounded. It's insane.
I mean, to be fair, Third Birthday is fucking just what, like.
As
to
a
be
Square
fair,
Enix story.
Listen, they lit up, okay?
In comparison to the other games, right? Like, because I watched someone did a really good video on it that I watched, and it's like, holy shit, this is a train wreck. This is fucking horrific. Like, wow, what the actual shit is this? But anyway, let's keep going.
With time travel, reincarnations, and strange aliens manifesting from a girl's psychological trauma. Final Fantasy VII was pretty wild, but never that wild. In retrospect, I look at the remake and feel like the Arbiters of Fate were signs that Nomura and his team were foaming at the mouth for the chance to put their own spin on the original, to leave their mark, as it were. And the game's ending was their war cry stating, "We're free! We can do whatever we want now!" This creative move is slightly justified by the idea that, yeah, sometimes it is exciting to be surprised or have our expectations subverted. The remake...
Well, you see,
He's
this video
literally-
is subverting my expectations.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be about Tsukihime, and our expectations are completely subverted.
Yeah, I'm feeling very subverted right now. I'm feeling extremely subverted.
Tsukihime.
It's annoying because it's like, I get what he's trying to say, and I understand. Okay, yeah, the subverting expectations thing is annoying as shit, and all that. Like, I get it, right?
Skillfully subverts expectations.
But he's not arguing it in a way that makes me want to side with him, I guess is the way that I would put it. Like, his argumentation could use a bit of work, and it could really use, staying on the topic of Tsukihime. Like, I didn't really expect to be watching a Final Fantasy VII remake video today. Very...
I mean, it is 2021. Like, anything can happen.
God damn. But it's. But anyway, let's keep going.
Remake's final battle was certainly fun. As a longtime fan, it was certainly interesting seeing these characters used in a new way, but that's not what I and many others wanted from the remake. I think my biggest frustration comes from the fact that subverting a work's original aspects in a remake makes the new work meta instead of dramatic. The moment FF7's remake went off the rails, it became less about what Cloud and his team were going to do, what goals they had, what challenges they would face, and more about what kind of statement this remake can say about the original. It's no longer a story about Cloud and his adventures, but rather a story about the game.
So this is what I mean. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying, and I understand the annoyance of meta bullshit or infecting shit these days. I get it. It's just one. This is not like, I don't want to keep repeating it because we've already said it like 500 times. But it's like, this is a Final Fantasy VII video and it's Tsukihime skin, right? Like, I just don't think that. I feel like he should have like structured this video a little bit differently and actually made it a proper Final Fantasy VII remake video talking about like remakes. Like, you could have mentioned the Tsukihime remake in the beginning, like he has, as being like, oh, this remake is coming out, but I'm worried about it because of the direction that this other remake has gone.
Yeah, like,
why. I see a good video here, right? Like, I see potential, but I think he's just kind of whiffing it.
Yeah, like, when I heard this video was going to be about Tsukihime, I was slobbering at the bit, and now I'm just being cock-blocked.
Yeah, you were, like, super excited to talk about Tsukihime because you've been playing it, and now you're not going to get to talk about Tsukihime because it's about
Otaku Daikun, if you do not mention Tsukihime, this video is going to get an F from me, like, both thumbs down.
It's fucking hilarious. I'm just sitting here as someone who hasn't played these games.
Daiku, why must you cock block me? How
I'm
dare
just
you?
sitting here as a guy that hasn't played these games, just like, this is the funniest shit.
Alright, let's continue.
Vampire
Known
cock.
as Final Fantasy VII. Suddenly, the characters are symbols rather than people. You can show Avalanche visions of the FF7 that once was, tell them shit like their entire world is being controlled by the hands of destiny, and they accept it without much trauma or confusion. That kind of writing works for a game like Super Smash Bros., where you need to gather a bunch of characters from different worlds into one loose narrative, but it's just not immersive. At least not as immersive as it could be if they just stuck to the original. I'm not saying that Tsukihime Remake will...
Yay!
Oh, fuck. It only took
Yes!
11 minutes.
Jesus Christ! But
I still
anyway,
take offense. I
before
still
we
take
actually,
offense to call. Super Smash Brothers doesn't try to have a story, and
at least not in the newer ones, and like you had
yeah,
what was it,
but
Subspace Emissary.
that's still
in
not.
the
Even
original
that
ones.
is not trying to
Brawl.
tell a story as.
It was, yeah.
I don't know why he.
I mean, what? I mean, the basic gist of the story in Brawl, right, for Subspace was basically, we have to defeat the evil handmen and the things, and as you go along, you slowly collect more and more of the cast as you go along, and then it climaxes in the final battle against the evil, shit.
Well, I mean, this being a Final Fantasy VII video, wouldn't a better comparison be Dissidia?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. It would have been much better to do Dissidia. So I want to recap a little bit, and just say that I feel like a big issue is that the whole last 11 minutes have basically just been, I personally didn't like the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Here's why. I didn't like it, guys. I really didn't. I'm going to repeat a couple of times that I really didn't like it, personally. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, that's fine. I don't necessarily disagree with you. It's not really, like, it's like you go into the movie theater and you buy a ticket for, like, I don't know, some action flick, and then you sit down and it's like a rom-com. That's kind of how I feel right now. Like, I feel like I've
John
been...
Wick movie is weird.
Yeah, I feel like I've been, like, bamboozled, like I walked into the wrong, like, theater, and I just have to kind of
instead of, like, John
I
Wick,
walk,
like Transformers.
It's weird. It's like...
I
feel
can't
a little bit
believe
bamboozled.
Final Fantasy Remake introduced Shiki from Tsukihime. How is this going to change the narrative?
Final Fantasy VII Remake featuring... Just put the sticker on the box.
Wouldn't Shiki be able to kill the
Oh
Winds
no,
of Fate?
Ellie, come on. You gotta do that for the thumbnail. You gotta do like a picture of like Final Fantasy with like now featuring this character from Tsukihime with like the little star and the fucking like Devil May Cry thing.
Or the reverse, Cloud now
maybe
included in the remake of.
Yeah. Now featuring Cloud from the Final Fantasy
Quick
VII
question:
remake.
could Shiki kill Cloud?
Yes.
No, better question.
Maybe I'll whip that up after we're done here.
Better question. Could Shiki kill the Ultima weapons?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: is that Shiki can kill anything.
Right. Well,
It's
now that he's actually gonna get into it, let's hear what he has to say.
Remake will suffer from this level of neglect. Nor am I saying it should be exactly like the original. From
What?
a storytelling perspective.
Whoa, hang on a minute.
What?
Hang on a minute. For the last 11 minutes, you've been bitching to us about how you're super, like, butthurt that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is not like the original. And now you're gonna come here and tell me that you wouldn't be butthurt if the Tsukihime Remake is not like the original. Daikun, what are you smoking? What are you doing, buddy?
I want some.
This video needed some script issues. This needed like a couple of more edit passes, my dude. Like, that's fucking god. Oh,
First you cock block me, and then you contradict the message of this video. I'm not.
yeah,
liking this.
that's really like God, I hate it because it's like, yeah, okay, I get it, but when you've spent the last 11 minutes harping about how this particular change to the original was bad in your opinion, right? And then you suddenly swerve into, okay, yeah, no, but in this case, I actually think it might be cool that they changed some stuff, or something like that. Like, I would be fine with it. It's like it undermines the entire point that you were making previously. Come on, my dude, come on. All right, let's keep going.
It has a lot of room to improve, relying on expositional dialogue a bit too much. But the last thing I want to see it do is make references to itself during the story that remind me there's an original. I want to see crazy stuff like Shiki dicing up Arcade. I want to see Nero Chaos's rampage. I want to see Akiha's hair go crimson. But I also want these things to be told to me with the same context and development as in the original. They shouldn't cut corners or assume we already know it all. I don't want it to be like Last Encore or Higurashigo, where the story is all about revisiting or commenting upon a story that's already been told. Rather than a meta sequel, I want Type Moon to tell me the story as if it were the first time, with all the...
Okay, so...
Higurashigo is straight up just a sequel, though.
Yeah, I was gonna... but...
Yeah, isn't it like got Rika in it when she's like a teenager as well?
I don't know how they do it. I haven't watched it.
Actually read Higurashi at some point. Bio, it's fun.
But,
Rika Fag told me the exact same thing.
Of course he did, but but anyway, so it annoys me because I get what he's saying. I understand because I don't like meta bullshit.
Why wasn't this a Twitter post?
Yeah, it feels like this could have been just a Twitter thread or something else. Like, I get that he probably wanted to make a video about Final... Like, he sounds like he has some thoughts about Final Fantasy VII Remake that he kind of wanted to get into.
Here's a point I want to bring up as well, is that, like, you may dislike the dialogue and stuff like that, but I think the dialogue helps to get into the main characters' heads more. And I think a thing with this remake that we should ask ourselves, are they going to cut out some of the content that, well... Like, this is being released on console, right? I think a question that I think Otaku Gaitun has to ask himself, and if he gets to that point, then, I'll ignore this criticism, but it's like, because it's going on a console and stuff like that, and because the way Sony is going, do you think that they may cut out content or context from the series?
I mean, we already know there probably isn't going to be erotic scene, or there isn't going to be actual pornographic scenes, at least in the console version. They're having a different release schedule for the PC version, so it's up in the air what it's like going to be like over there.
So, you see, that's kind of like actual questions that I think should be kind of
I thought that would come up at some point in this video, but like
he still has like a couple of minutes left, so he might.
Well, that's what I said. Like, if he brings it up, then ignore that criticism.
But I get what you're saying, though. I think that is an actual like.
It's still criticism because that's a much more interesting topic than his opinions on fucking Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I agree. It's like talking about like, is this possibly going to be censored? Essentially, right? Due to the current climate and how things are. Like, I get that.
I mean, if you look at the screenshots I posted, do you think that something like this would get past Sony?
Well,
I mean, time's gonna tell.
I can't look right now because I have the waveforms up and I've got
that's fine. But read that later.
I will look at it later. But it's it annoys me because it's like, I fucking agree with you, dude. But this is not the video to be making this point. I hate it, but I like it. It's like, oh, god damn it. But anyway, we've got 2 minutes left. Let's blaze for it.
With all the appeal the original had, with a modern look and more polish. They can supplement the material, clarify it even, but hopefully not subvert it. Ultimately, all I can offer is my own opinion. I'm sure there are fans out there who love all that meta stuff. To that end, I would appreciate it if you can all share your feelings about Tsukihime and remakes in general. In your own words, what does a perfect remake look like?
Okay, well, he's putting the ball in our court now.
Original content? How?
Oh shit! Oh shit! Ellie's having a mental fucking crisis.
Original.
Oh shit!
We don't do OC. We just bitch
L-E-E-X.
about other people's OC.
How do I do original?
Shit!
I can't. Help, Retsu, help me.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh. Alright, well, I will help you, and I will say, right, so my feelings on remakes and that kind of stuff is, I actually have somewhat of a similar viewpoint to Daikun in that I personally prefer, like, wouldn't say maybe a straight remake. I like a remake that remakes the original, maybe adds to it in a few ways, like, maybe, like, for instance, if you had, let's say, one of my favorite games, KOTOR 2, right? Let's go with that, because that's a good example. If they remade KOTOR 2, I would expect stuff like the restored content patch to be part of that remake, as well as maybe like adding some more of the cut content that couldn't have been salvaged, like the stuff with Bayador and like a few other things that I feel like would probably be good, because obviously one of the biggest issues with KOTOR 2 was the fact that the game was, like, because it's an Obsidian game, it was rushed out the door because of the contracts and stuff, and they weren't able to actually put in like nearly half of the shit they actually wanted to put inside the game. So in that case, I would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, remake it, add all the cut content, add in maybe some new stuff that you've fought up over the, that kind of thing. I'd be down for a remake like that, and that's probably like the same for a lot of people. I agree that I wouldn't want it to be some kind of meta commentary bullshit about like the past version of the game and making references and memes and like kind of, like look at the screen, thumbs up kind of jokey type shit. Like, I'm not a fan of that personally. So I think for me, I prefer my remakes to kind of either be somewhat straight to the original with maybe some minor changes here and there that work in service to make it better, or adding additional content on top of what's already established to, maybe make it better, I guess, quotation marks, better. So that's my stance. What about the rest of you guys? What do you guys got for your OC statements?
I mean, for a remake of a game, like, basically similar thing, like, if you want to add some stuff to it, then that's completely fine, like...
Yeah?
Oh, wow, you stopped talking. Yeah, he stopped.
Oh, sorry, I had to keep
we
it
lost
up.
him.
I'm sorry.
Original content is hard.
We lost you.
Sorry,
it's all good. It's hard. I understand.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Basically,
keep going.
if you're like adding to the game and like giving it some polish, or maybe adding some things that make like cleaning up, like I think that's a good idea for a remake. And I'll be back in a sec because I just need to check something.
All right, that's fine. Who wants to go?
I guess I'll talk. So I've been playing the Star Ocean games, right? I'm starting with the first one, and I'm playing. Out of not having access to the Switch port of Star Ocean, first departure, I believe. That was on the Switch. I've been playing the Super NES fan translation, and one of the really neat things about the First Departure, which was originally on the PSP, and with like First Departure R, which is on the Switch, is that they actually, because the original Star Ocean was kind of rushed, they actually added in a bunch of things that were cut in the final product. Like, they added like an entirely new character and like 2 separate routes, right? So that was actually 2 separate character arcs. Like, they actually finished up like the characters' stories, like some of them that were rushed through at the end. On top of that, the First Departure R port actually added in the voice actors for the Super NES version. And yes, the Super NES version had voice actors. They really pushed that sound chip. It's kind of insane. So they added that back as a little bit of a bonus. First Departure actually completely changed the routes in between worlds in a way that I don't really care for that much. Because in the original one, you were actually like going through different screens in a structured environment to reach new places, right? Whereas in the remake, they add in kind of like a Final Fantasy VII style overworld, right? And that's what they keep with First Departure R. But overall, First Departure is considered more definitive because it fixes a lot of the problems of the original, and it adds in all of the cut shit back. So for me, a perfect remake would be more in line, at least in the manner in which like video games do remakes. I think a video games remake would be more in line with what was intended for the player experience, but they weren't quite able to deliver at the end because of very natural like time constraints.
So a very similar perspective to me then, where it's like you use the remake as an opportunity to kind of do what was originally intended using the available resources that you have now, as opposed to what you had when you first made that game all those years ago. I think that might be a good way to kind of simplify it. Well, Ali, I know it's hard, but it's your turn.
Sweating.
It's your turn in the circle time.
Let's see. I think a good remake is basically...
All right, what do you think about
good
remakes?
Remake, Xenoblade Chronicles for the Switch, updated graphics, modernized some UI stuff, made some cataloging things easier, like finding specific things at specific times of day, etc., etc. Better quest tracking. It added even a nice after story, so more story content. They cut a little bit on some technical details, some minor technical details, which was a shame. But for all in all, it's just a straight up improvement. So that's a remake, a straight up remake, and a remake in disguise. I guess there aren't that many remake or a remaster that is actually a remake. I mean, Final Fantasy is basically the only one, and he mentioned the Fate Extra anime series, but that is not even, or Higurashigo, but I don't even count them. Those are not remakes either. So I guess I'm kind of confused of why they are included in this video. Tsukihime is I would believe a remake or a remaster. All these different terms. You got remaster, you got remake, you got well, they're not often revisions.
All that kind of getting into semantics and bullshit.
Yeah, so there aren't that many remakes that are straight up bad, because most of them are ports with lacking additional content. It's very, very rarely.
Yeah, just let's upscale the graphics. But
not include all the patches and DLC that expanded upon what this and that, or they ported the PlayStation 2 version and not the PC version.
So you would okay, right?
So
So what you would say would be like a good remake would be something that does a little bit beyond just like a
remaster is just upscaling, and that's it basically. And a remake is remaking it to the standards of today. And story is kind of not included in that. So I'm not really concerned. I mean, if the story is worse, fine. The story in the original was better. The manga did it better, or whatever version of that you have.
The manga.
But as long as the story is also fine,
right.
then I don't really care that much about the story.
Alright. Okay, so because you're roboting a little bit for us, that won't show up in the recording, but I'm just bringing it up so you know. You would say that you have a bit more leniency than I guess me and some of the others, including Daikun, would have in terms of like what you would want from something being remade, especially if it was something that you cared about. I guess you would be a bit more lenient to changes that would differ from the original experience.
Well, maybe it's just my tolerance to adaptations in general. I mean, if I'm reading manga and the anime does it differently, well, I know they can't.
you just deal with it.
I know they can't adapt all the internal dialogue, but just include that little bit and fine. All right, you don't. That's fine. I kind of appreciate Final Fantasy VII for taking the series in another direction. And even stuff like Evangelion. All the remakes, all the 1.11 movies are massive. Like, get it, look, it's different. See how it criticizes my previous work and how it criticized the otaku in general. See, and then they draw fan art of Rei and Asuka anyway. That's how it goes.
Okay, but anyway, all right. Well, I guess now that we've done that, let's cap off the video then. Let's see how he ends it.
Regardless of the outcome, I'm certainly hyped about the great things we can look forward to this year. Be assured that I'll be covering the best the anime world has to offer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed.
All right, now we're on the outro. Man, he has a long outro. Like that's what, like a minute and a half outro.
Play it and I'll.
Damn.
Let's help me
Have
beat
a look. The algorithm by liking,
This is very classic.
video,
I remember this.
subscribing to
This is
Otaku Daikun, and
yeah.
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussions.
Well, at least he does this at the
lore,
end,
or
so-
Let's Play content.
Yeah, but this is pretty much his standard outro that he uses. I'm just interested because I haven't seen it in a long time, and I haven't watched him in a while. It's great. It's exactly the same as I remember, just updated with the visuals. Oh, then he's got
Oh, look, it's Saber.
Saber Dance. Nice.
Alright, yeah, so-
Alright, well, I guess it's just Patreon names now, and we don't have to kind of go through that. So yeah, I guess we'll cap off the video then. I kind of have the stance of I agree a little bit with what he's saying. I just don't think this was the video to kind of make the arguments that he's making. I think a better video to make would have been kind of talking about why meta bullshit is bad and why he dislikes it. I think that would have been a much better, like, because that's basically the arguments that he was sort of making in this video, was he doesn't like that kind of meta type shit. I feel like that would have been a better video to make rather than have a Tsukihime video, which is actually a Final Fantasy VII remake video. Other than that, I think, production was okay. He has a few script issues there that he could probably work out. But all in all, I'd say it's not the worst we've watched, but he's got some room for improvement.
The exposition. No, I'll go on then. Let's say it starts off fine, then starts with definition, but the definition is basically just a summary of the final of the battle between Cloud and Sephiroth, which isn't needed. I mean, maybe it's too reductive to say that leading up to this point, to this battle that the remake references, there's a whole character arc in Cloud where he confronts his past, while in the remake it's just, look, Sephiroth, the guy you know, we're going to fight now, look how cool it is. And that's bad because the people who haven't played it the original are missing out on the emotional impact, and the people who already have played it are missing out on seeing this again in updated graphics and higher fidelity. See, I'm making his argument in a much shorter period of time.
Yeah, that's kind of the main problem, as well as not citing shit that I forgot.
And let's say afterwards, it gets kind of vague. It's too many Final Fantasy, and I don't really consider, the Fate Extra anime and Higurashigo as equivalent to it, because maybe it's just, medium discrimination, but books and movies and all that stuff, it's all stories, while game is you participating in the story, and I rate that differently, I guess. And and of course the end is, well, what do you think of remakes? Well, we gave our opinions on remakes. I'm more lenient.
Yeah, we already got we went through that already.
Unless I'm forgetting something, I don't skip anything that much.
No, I think you did a pretty good overview of like what was talked about in the video. I think definitely the fact that it's mostly talking about why he didn't like Final Fantasy VII Remake is a bit iffy. I feel again, it feels like this is a different video than it should have been, right? It feels like this should have been like a more constructed video about why he believes that like meta bullshit in remakes and using Final Fantasy VII as an example.
In all honesty, I think this video should have been more focused. Like, it mentions Tsukihime, but we only get like 1 minute of Tsukihime, and I feel incredibly betrayed and cockblocked.
Yeah, he didn't spend a lot of time actually talking about Tsukihime.
I think this video, like, the idea of it is good, but like it needs to be put in the oven for a few more minutes. Like, it needs some more cooking.
It needs to be put in the oven, and it needs a different title, I think. But I mean, I respect the hustle, but again, it's I think it's a bit false advertising a little bit.
So it's like, look, Tsukihime gets a remake.
Well, Lolly, have you got anything?
Tsukihime gets a remake. Final Fantasy did it.
My entire thing, I more or less said everything I wanted to say. Just this entire thing. Why the fuck is this branded as a Tsukihime video?
yeah, pretty much. Oh well. I guess that's it. This has been an alright one.
To close it off, if the Final Fantasy bit wasn't so long, this video would have been, look, Tsukihime gets a remake. I'm worried about remakes today because of this trend, so things, and to take a look at Final Fantasy VII in particular, look what they did to it. I don't want this to happen to Tsukihime.
Here are some examples from Tsukihime that I think might be changed, right? Like, talk about, hey, this is
because he mentioned like the
actual story, with spoiler alerts, obviously, but like this is some stuff that
because he mentioned something like that some exposition or some lengthy bits can get cut. So if he just even for the meme joke, have the text scroll on screen, like a good 10 seconds of text that goes on and on, that could easily be cut, then he had something to show.
Yeah, have some examples of that. Yeah, I feel like, okay, like how do we fix this video? You cut the Final Fantasy VII stuff in half, right? Probably by removing the bit where he spends like a good solid few minutes just recapping Cloud's character arc, right? Cut that out, right? And just kind of, have the rest of the video be, hey, here are some things in the Tsukihime remake that I'm worried about, that I think might be censored or changed or might not make it into the remake, or here is how I'm worried that they might change this particular aspect of the story, and then you can kind of go from there, right? I think that would have probably been a much better video overall. But as it stands, my overall kind of rating, I'm not going to put rating, but like my overall feelings about this video is it's not a bad video. It's an interesting discussion. Like, it's not a bad video from the perspective of it's an interesting discussion, and we've had some interesting discussions in this video of us talking about this video, like in the meta context. So I just think that it needed to be better structured, and it had a lot of fluff that could probably have been cut, and some scripting edits needed to be made. But overall, it's been a fun cast. I think we can all agree it's been fun, and we'll see everyone in the next one. So, bye everyone. Later.
Bye-bye.